Yeah. You like my loud shirt?
Yes.
Turn the volume down.
I don't know if it's messing up the camera or not. I don't know.
It's
Not the shirt.
Well, you know, God gives words, and you think, okay, then tell me what I'm supposed to say about this word. Well, this word is horn. Isn't that strange? Well, it's not strange, really. Horn, okay? The Webster's Dictionary describes horn as this: a hard substance growing on the heads of certain animals, and particularly a cloven-footed quadrupeds, usually projecting to some length and terminating at a point. So generally are bent and curving, and those have spirals. Get this: they serve for weapons of offense and defense. I want you to remember this. This is important. It's also a wind instrument made of horn. So what kind of horn am I talking about? A shofar. Do you know your shofar is a weapon?
uh-huh.
Do you know it's a weapon?
Yes, it is.
And you know it's not just a physical weapon. You know this, right?
Yes.
It's not. And it kind of shofar. Okay, I'm gonna get to the definition of the Brown Driver Briggs definition of it's a horn, a ram's horn. That's it. That's the definition they give. But it's a masculine name. Well, it also means, in its original sense, it's a sense of incising. That's to engrave, to etch, to carve, to cut. Now, I say this to say, when that shofar blows, you should feel it.
Yeah.
If you're not feeling it, you're missing something. You should feel every time that shofar blows. It's his instrument. Okay? And you should feel it. In Exodus 19:16, it says, "And it came to be on the third day and in the morning, there were thunders and lightning and a thick cloud on the mountain, and the voice of the shofar was very strong, and all the people who were in the camp trembled." You think they were trembling because of a physical issue? The spirit was all over that place.
Yes.
They couldn't stand it. That horn blew spiritually. They felt it. And it scared them. They never encountered anything like that before. Do you feel it?
Mm.
Does it enter into your being every time it's blown?
Yes.
But I'm telling you, it's an instrument of war.
Yes, it is.
We're entering the days of spiritual warfare. We're entering into those days. We have to be prepared for what's coming on a spiritual level. And you better prepare your being. Yehoshua 6:1-5, it says this: "And Jericho was shut up tight because of the presence of the sons of Israel, none going out and none coming in. And Yahweh said to Yehoshua, see, I have given you Jericho and its sovereign, mighty brave men into your hand. And you shall go around the city, all the men of battle going around the city once. Do this for 6 days. And let 7 priests bear 7 shofarot, that's 7 shofars of yellow. Can't pronounce it all of a sudden. Before the ark, and on the 7th day go around the city 7 times, while the priests blow the shofarot. And it shall be when they make long blast at the horn of Yobel, and you hear the voice of the shofar, that all the people shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city shall fall down flat, and the people shall go up, every man straight before him. Does that speak to you spiritually? It should. To get the walls to fall didn't take not one battering ram, not one. The people and the shofar. Have you ever heard, I think it was the 7-day war, the 6-day war, rather. I'm sorry. I don't know why I call it 7-day war. It's always a 6-day war. Anyway, let me back up a step. 6-day war. And they were blowing shofars. They were blowing shofars in that battle. It wasn't just bullets. Okay, that was a physical war, but it was also a spiritual war. 6 days. They took it. 6 days. The battle was won in Jericho in the spiritual realm first. And the walls fell. Then they went in and took the city. Not sparing one. Well, it does spare one. I'm sorry. Yeah, they spared one. And you know the story. So are we prepared for a spiritual war? Because it's happening. And until we stand and fight against the principalities and those who rule, the evil that rules, if we don't get on our knees, blow a shofar, and pray against what's happening, they're going to win. But they're not going to. Ultimately. Yeah, we know the full story, right? Anyway, just to go on, knowing that this is a spiritual weapon as well as a physical weapon. This is where the spiritual and the physical kind of go together. In that horn, in that shofar. I would suggest to each of you to get your spiritual weapons ready. Put on the armor of Elohim every day, Cheryl. Every day. Get your sword of the Spirit, which is what? The Word. And blow the shofar to run out the evil. You think he scatters when he hears that? You think the evil ones scatter when they hear that? There's miraculous things done because that shofar is blown and they were ready and prepared for the spiritual battle that's set in front of them. Are you prepared? I know that I speak of this kind of stuff a lot, but there's a reason for it. Because we need to be prepared. It goes on in Judges 3:27-30, and it says, and it came to be when he arrived that he blew the shofar in the mountains of Ephraim, and the children of Israel went down with him from the mountains with him leading them. And he said to them, "Follow me, for Yahweh has given your enemies, the Moabites, into your hand." And they went down after them and took the fords of the Jordan leading to Moab, and did not allow anyone to pass over. They blew a shofar. Before you get started, and they struck about 10,000 men of Moab at the time, all robust and brave men, and not a man escaped. And on that day, Moab was humbled under the hand of Israel, and the land had rest for 8 years. Prepare for battle, blowing a shofar. Get yourselves a shofar. Get yourself one. Learn how to use it. It's a weapon against the enemy.
Yes, it is.
That's my personal feeling. You don't have to. It's on you. Learn how to use your weapons. You don't have to lift a finger except for to blow that shofar. Be in the Word, because you may someday. I won't say you won't. There's a day you never know. But our being does not want to go to war physically. If we can win the spiritual battle, we've won the physical war. Okay? My humble opinion. Judges 7:18. And I shall blow with the shofar, I and all those with me. Then you shall go also blow with the shofar around about all the camp and say, for Yahweh and for Gideon. In 2 Samuel 2:28, and Yoha blew with the shofar. He blew with the shofar, and all the people halted and pursued Israel no further, nor did they fight anymore. He blew a shofar. They stopped dead in their tracks over it, blowing of a shofar. You think the Spirit wasn't moving? You want the Spirit to move?
Yes.
Blow that shofar. Get in the Word. Put your armor on every day. Nehemiah 4:20. In whatever place you hear the voice of the shofar, join us there. Our Elohim fights for us.
Amen.
We blow the shofar. His Spirit comes and fights for us.
Yes.
He comes and fights for us. We should blow that thing every day. Of course, my cats wouldn't like it too much.
That's true.
I think they would scatter. Oh. I'm going to skip one and go right to here. In Zechariah 9:14 through 17. Yahweh shall appear for them, for his arrow goes forth like lightning, and the master of Yahweh sound the shofar, and he shall go with the whirlwinds from the south. And Yahweh of hosts shall shield them. They shall devour and trample on sling stones, and they shall drink roars of wine, and they shall be filled with like basins, like the corners of a slaughter place. And Yahweh their Elohim shall save them in that day, as the flock of his people. For the stones of Dadim sparkling over the land. For what goodness is his, and for what comeliness is his. Grain make the young man thrive, and new wine the maidens. And lastly, Isaiah 18:3. All inhabitants of the world, and you that dwell on the earth, when a banner is lifted up on the mountains, look, and when the shofar is blown, hear.
Yes.
So thank you for allowing me to share what he has given me. and I hope that it's made a difference in how you perceive his shofar. It's an instrument for him to call to battle, a call to assemble, a call to worship,
Yes.
a call to praise.
Yes.
So let's give him all the praise. Hallelujah.
Amen.
Sam, would you come light the menorah, please, sir?
These lights represent the sevenfold spirits of Yahweh around his throne that were in Yeshua when he was on the earth to accomplish all the wonderful and mighty works he did. We're going to welcome the sevenfold spirits here today. Yah's will would be done in the midst of us, and when we leave these doors, leave these places and go home and to our places of work, and wherever we may be, we would carry the remembrance of this day and his spirit with us always. We welcome your spirit of Yahweh.
We receive your spirit, Yahweh.
We welcome your spirit of wisdom.
We receive your spirit of wisdom.
We welcome your spirit of understanding.
We receive your spirit of understanding.
We welcome your spirit of counsel.
We receive your spirit of counsel.
We welcome your spirit of might.
We receive your spirit of might.
We welcome your spirit of knowledge.
We receive your spirit of knowledge.
And we welcome your spirit of the fear of Yahweh.
We receive your spirit of the fear of Yahweh.
Wonderful and glorious Father in the heavens, our King, our Redeemer, Yeshua, for all that you have done. Truly you have died for us, and you rose again.
Yes.
You laid down your blood for us. You suffered for our sins and the sins of the whole world. Thank you for what you have done.
Thank you.
I had a fresh memory of that during one of those songs. Yeshua, our King, you died for me. And what you did, no one else could have done. As the Lamb of Elohim that takes away the sins of the world, you did that very well. And all those who will call upon your name, Yeshua, all those who will believe in you, all those who will turn from their sins and their wicked ways and embrace you and live their lives unto you and to hope in the promises that you have left us. Father, thank you. Thank you for making a way for us. Thank you today we're able to hear that word. We're able to hear your words of encouragement and truth and prophecy of the things to come. And we thank you that all that you do for us daily, that you are the encourager of the brothers and sisters in Messiah. You encourage us always. You know what we need to hear and when we need to hear it. And we thank you that you're ever faithful toward us. All that you do, we give praise to you for it. Father, today, once again, we can hear your word taught into us. Father, a very good story today of things that have happened, Father, that would warn us about how we are to react, Father, to the things of this life. May we learn today through the lesson. May we learn what not to do and what to do. And Father, we thank you today that you help us continually. We know that you're with us always. And Father, today as we hear your word, let that word find a place of residence in our hearts. Let it find a place of remembrance in our minds. Father, let it come upon our lips so we might be able to share it with others. Let your word bear much fruit in our lives as we not only receive it today, but that we would share it with others. Father, thank you today for what we're going to hear. Let Barry, Father, declare it as you have prepared him to do so, and the anointing that is upon him to do it and accomplish all your good will. Let it be happen today. Let it be your will today in this place among this people and those on the internet who are watching also. Let your will be accomplished in it as your will is always done before your presence and your throne in the heavens. In Yeshua's name we humbly pray. Amen and amen. Thank you, Father.
Amen.
Thank you, Father. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much for all of you who have joined in here with us today. Beautiful crowd. Thank you. Yah has sown his gifts in the body, wonderfully so. And among those gifts and treasures that he has sown to us is Dr. Suuqiina and Qaumaniq. And we've been blessed by Suuqiina many times, and we're thankful for that. And a couple occasions before, Quam has been with us. And we're looking forward to hearing her share what Yah has put in her heart for us today. Qaumaniq, making her way to Virginia, probably your last opportunity. So we don't want to pass this up. We want to take opportunity when it's presented to us. I've invited Quam to share with us what Yah would say to us through her. And I know we'll be blessed by that, share information as well about the upcoming conference in Richmond. At the conclusion, there's a very short word that Yah gave me last night as I was trying to go to sleep. And I want to share that with you. That'll take a short amount of time. It will involve only one closing. 4 or 5 maybe, but probably just one. In your giving today, anything that's not designated as tithes, we want to bless Qaumaniq and her travels and her ministry. So if you will have a gift, if you want to direct it through House of David, just make it the House of David and put on the memo line Qaumaniq. And if you want to make it directly to Qaumaniq, it's IMI. Is that correct? Make it payable to IMI. So without any delay, Qaumaniq, would you come and just share with us what is it Yah has put on your heart? Make her welcome, would you? Suuqiina.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Where's Laura? Come up. This got shipped to me last week up here.
Is this filming now?
Well, it's not filming right now. We're just doing it. We'll get a picture of it later, but I wanted you to hold it so he could see.
Okay.
And then you
You
can
turn
take a
it
picture.
around. Because he's looking at you.
Is he?
Yeah.
Yeah. This way he's not. Oh.
It's hard to keep up with.
So anyway, Suuqiina called me when I got to Tennessee, and he said, the Lord laid it on my heart to do something for House of David. Because he said, we've come there so many times and they're family to us. So he went at it with painting and shipped it to me to Virginia. And he has a special for you guys. And he said, I was tempted to keep this one because it was one of my, think it was one of my very best. And it's got House of David down here. This is your building.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
It's
it is.
beautiful, Suuqiina. Oh, beautiful.
You guys.
That's beautiful. Yes. beautiful.
stand back, you can see the lion better.
Yes.
Because it's a mosaic. But he said, this is the tent over the house of David. This is your building now.
Yes. Yes.
That's
front.
beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sakina.
Thank you so much,
It's
Sakina.
beautiful.
And then he sent this, so
Oh,
you
the
can make
talent.
copies if you want to, he said. For your
Awesome.
people.
Thank you. That is beautiful. Beautiful. Your talent never ceases
So
to
I had to
amaze
come
us.
today because y'all are going to be gone.
That's
I just crossed the border and I'm like, I'm going to have to get that out there.
That's
too.
beautiful. Thank
He
you.
said that was one of my favorite ones I've ever done.
That's amazing
Gorgeous.
work.
House of David.
Yes. Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to get Chris to take a picture of us with it.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. I got to
Make
fix you.
it a picture.
Okay, Suuqiina, we're leaving you now.
Thank you, Sakina. Blessings. Love you. He says, love you all.
You know who that's in the corner back there, don't you? Your brother from another mother. That's Jim Hill.
Oh, wow.
Okay, let me get this off of
She
here.
has to get a picture
Oh.
All right.
I got it. That way?
Thanks. So we can all get in there. You might have to stand back just a little.
Again. Again. Okay.
Laura.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you. It's beautiful.
You're welcome.
Are you speaking?
Yes. I know what I want. I want to read something out. I'm moving slow. I'm reading very slow. Then we got to the bridge and it was like, oh no. 30 minutes on the bridge. This is great. Let me see if I can find this. I'll start with this. Take me just a minute. Scrolling through here, it's like looking at my life pass before me. I've been going through pictures and I've been having to look back over the last 25, 35 years of my life. And that's what happens when you get to this age. I'm 71 and a half.
What?
I read this the other day. It's by Anthony Hopkins. And it really spoke to me. And I don't know what his political basis is or if he's a good person or anything. But what he wrote really spoke to kind of where I'm at in my life right now. And we'll explain, why we're doing what we're doing here in Virginia. And this is what he wrote. I know that I have less to live than I have lived. I feel like a child who was given a box of chocolates. He enjoys eating it, and when he sees that there is not much left, he starts to eat them with special taste. I have no time for endless lectures on public laws. Nothing will change. And there is no desire to argue with fools who do not act according to their age. And there's no time to battle the gray. I don't attend meetings where egos are inflated, and I can't stand manipulators. I'm disturbed by envious people who try to vilify the most capable to grab their positions, talents, and achievements. I have too little time to discuss headlines. My soul is in a hurry. Too few candies left in the box. I'm interested in human people. People who laugh at their mistakes or those who are successful, who understand their calling and don't hide from responsibility, who defend human dignity and want to be on the side of truth, justice, and righteousness. This is what living is for. I want to surround myself with people who know how to touch the hearts of others, who through the blows of faith were able to rise and maintain the softness of the soul. Yes, I hustle. I hustle to live with the intensity that only maturity can give. I'll eat all the candy I have left. They'll taste better than the ones I already ate. My goal is to reach the end in harmony with myself, my loved ones, and my conscience. I thought I had 2 lives, but it turned out only to be one, and it needs to be lived with dignity. When I read that, I thought, wow. I mean, I think that's what eldership is. Many of you elders in the room. And so my life is at this point, Suuqiina's life is at this point, being able to kind of sit back and see what we've sown for the last 25 years, a quarter of a century, especially into the First Nations contextualized movement. When Suuqiina started this before me, a few years before me, no one could take a drum into any of the churches in Alaska. He took the first drum. And then when Chuck Pierce called he and Nigel Big Pond and Jace Wallace to a conference in 1998, they locked his drum in the office because the church was afraid of the drum. Church had been taught that the drum was demonic, native things were demonic. So for us to be able to sit back and when I talk with the Riverlands and they're just like, we just can't even believe that. And because in one generation, they're being able, you have a drum here. I remember when I first began to travel with Suuqiina, a brilliant teacher. He would stand up and hold up his drum and he'd say, "This drum never sinned." He said, "The tree it came from was a good tree." And then he would look at the stuff and he'd say, Did you cast those Shinto spirits out of your Yamaha drums?" Suuqiina's funny, and one of the things that someone said about him one time is a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. Because he's also very hard. I mean, he's tough, that's what I mean, but he's funny. But he taught me a whole lot. I said, there's Jewish converts and there's Catholic converts. Well, I'm a protocol convert. I came into First Nations. I didn't even know I was First Nations at the time. I married this First Nations man. And I purposed, because the Lord told me, he's your Elijah. I want you to learn everything you can from him. And I purposed to sit under him and listen to everything that he taught me. And I think I've told you all the story about the nose and all that, where he, told me I was trying to learn protocol. And told me that, all this stuff about the native mother's nose. And the women didn't talk at the dinner table, the native women, and I didn't talk for 6 weeks till Linda Prince got on him. So you can't do that. But I really was a person that really wanted, once I got a hold of protocol is a thing of the heart. It's not about gifts. It's a thing of the heart. And it comes by revelation. So does being grafted into Israel. You can talk about it all day long, but it comes by revelation. And it's exciting when people get the revelation. After you've been sitting with them for a long time, Barry and Laura understand that, and all of a sudden they're like, well, this is what that is. And you're like, yes. I was just we did the gathering. I did a gathering in Nashville last year, and Barbara Ann Jeter, who was the head of King's Hill House of Prayer, I was working with her to bring the First Nations in because she said, I want to have First Nations to do stuff here. And whenever I go in to do something, there's always a lot of paradigms that you're bumping up against. And she had Cherokee blood, but she had never done anything with First Nations. So, I mean, it was so much warfare. When you bring Israel, First Nations together, and then you add the church to it, church component. And I'm not disrespectful when I say that. I'm talking about the classic Euro-American church with it. You're dealing with so different cultures of thinking, paradigms of thought. And paradigms of thought are really hard, they're hard to break through. So the building was changed so many times where we were going to have it. We were coming there to honor Nashville and form covenant with Kings Hill. And at one point she was like, and I knew she didn't have the revelation of what first, she wanted to do the right thing. And that's the way a lot of people are. They're like, I know we killed your people and we stole your stuff and we want to do the right thing, baby, but they still see First Nations at the mission field. And it takes a total shift of the paradigm of thought. And it really is where God opens people's eyes. He had to open mine. And she was changing the building. First it was going to be, I said, we'll be there all day on Saturday. And then it was like, well, can they just do it for 3 hours? And I'm like, no, ma'am, we can't do it 3 hours. It has to be all day. And can we do it at this building? I said, my people have to have a place to pee. So we have to have bathrooms. And I mean, it was walking through that place where she's well-meaning and sweet as she can be, but it was getting cut down. And then it was like, we're going to be in a residential area. They can't make much noise. I said, they make a lot of noise. That's going to work. So I said, and so I finally said to her, it was like, I've been very complacent and because I'm very patient when you're working in that because you understand the people are good. They just don't get it. And so I just said to her, and she said later, I couldn't believe you. I said, Barbara Ann, you said you wanted the nations to come to you. Well, these are the First Nations and the correct protocols for them to come up first. And your place is going to be filled with the nations of the world. And I said, but this is what I need to tell you. I'm going to be compliant and but when it comes to my people who have been ignored for centuries, their voice has not been heard. They've been put in a box. There's not any room for them to breathe. I will not dumb down their experience. And if you guys don't want to do this in Nashville, I'll do it in my grandkids' backyard. But my people are coming to Nashville, and they're going to be honored. And you decide. I said, you're not a hireling. God showed me your heart. You're not a hireling. You're not hired out to the systems where he's taking you. And I said, if you'll partner with First Nations, you're going to see a whole thing open up in your life. And I said, but you're going to have to trust me because you don't see it. You can't see it yet. Can I just guide you? Will you trust me enough to link arms with me and do what I ask you to do? And she said, yes, I will. And we got to the gathering. She was sitting next to me. Joseph and Laura Lynn and Brandy and Alex Costello got up to lead worship, and they strummed the first chord. And Joseph started, hey, ya, hey, ya, hey, ya. She grabbed my leg and she went, oh, oh. I said, I told you. She said, I need to repent to you. She said, I didn't do this the way I would have normally. I said, you don't need to repent to me. You didn't see it. Suuqiina has this slogan, all the light in the world doesn't do a blind man any good. And the main thing with it is she got it. But the Lord had to. We can sit and have panels and discussions, and it's about relationship and coming together in relationship. And you can't get it till you get it. And it comes through the Lord downloading it to you. And I mean, she was like, and then I'm now doing a prayer time once a month. First Nations, pray for First Nations on their prayer thing. When I get back home, I'm going to work more to get more representations across the United States. First, that I know of, House of Prayer, who has First Nation. First, she was like, well, we're going to give Israel the first day, and then Nashville the second day, and then First Nations will be the third day. After that gathering, she said, we're going to give Israel the first day, First Nations the second day, and Nashville the third day. She was like, I said, and then she was asked to speak on protocol and honor at the Woman on the Frontlines conference. Just to tell you a little bit about this, the power of protocol, which I think when Suuqiina's in my life is over, that I would say the biggest thing that God has dropped in us is protocol.
Yes.
And honor and leaving that to the generations of people. And we haven't done it very perfectly well in our own lives. We've had our own, I call them protocol bloopers, where we do it wrong, or either where our ego is in the way and we end up being ineffective, which happens. But Barbara Ann asked, I want to meet with Native Americans because a lot of the people in the church have heard that when the sleeping giant rises, which is the Native American revival, will hit America. And so what happens is sometimes people want the First Nations people to come because but it's narcissistic. Like it's not chesed. Chesed is when you got nothing back. It's we want you to come, we want to partner with you because we want revival. Or like we want the Jews to get saved because Messiah's going to come back then. But it's not about the people. And so I had sent her the book. She called and wanted to know, about, we want First Nations involved. And so I sent her our protocol book. And about 3 months later, she called me. She said, I want to meet with you when you come into Nashville. I said, okay. So we went out to eat, and she walked in with her Warfare by Honor book, and it looked like her Bible. It had been highlighted, pages turned down, underlined stuff. She plunked it down in front of her, and she said, we have Kings Hill House of Prayer because of protocol. She said, I'm going to tell you what happened. She said, we were in the negotiations, and we told them when we had a contract, and then they found out that we were believers, and they'd been really hurt by believers. And so they tried to sell it out from under us. And she's a realtor. She said, we were looking at a lawsuit. And she said, I just didn't want to have to do that, but it was coming to that. She said, then they were asking us for more money down. They weren't going to carry the terms. We had to close so much earlier than the money we were getting in. And she said, it looked like we were going to have to probably be in court. Kings Hill is built on the highest hill in Nashville. It was originally a meth house. And they completely have renovated, and anyone can go there. People live there. It's 24-hour prayer, and when you're in their backyard, the whole city of Nashville's right there. So I had told her, we can come and I can bring a team of people. We can come, and the Cherokee, we can welcome. And, people don't know what you're talking about. But she was like, okay, whatever. So when I was sitting across from her eating lunch with her that day, she put the book down there. She said, I got to tell you. She said, I didn't know what to do. And the Lord said to me, go get that book Qaumaniq sent you and read it. And she said, I read that book, and it was like, we have to do protocol with this guy. And so she said, I went into him, and she said, your book said, listen to their story. So she said, I went in and sat down with him, and I said, I want to hear your story. And I know your mother had owned this house. I want to hear about your mother. Tell me about your mother. And he began to share the story about his mother, and then he shared some of his story. And then she said, well, I just want to honor your mother. So you tell me what you want us to do, and we'll do it. Whatever you want, whatever. I'm not going to fight with you on anything. If you don't want us to have it, we won't have it, because I want to honor your mother. And he said, well, I tell you what, I'm going to take, I think he said $50,000 off of the down payment. I'm going to carry the terms as long as you need, and I'm going to close whenever you want. She said, protocol and honor is why we're here in Nashville. It was like, and I mean, you talk about a person turned on to honor and protocol. I just gave her a drum. She was so excited she got Cherokee blood. When we got there and did the gathering, we did a grand entry, and she was hopping around with the Cherokee flag. She was so excited. She was like, I'm Native. I'm so glad, And she's gotten a hold of honor. And when I went through Nashville, I gave her a drum, a Destiny drum that I had designed, and Suuqiina had painted for me because I was out of time. And basically, she was just thrilled to have that drum. I don't know if y'all have heard of Becca Shea. But Becca Shea is one of her best friends, and they had a slumber party, a girls' night, and Becca has drums everywhere. And she said, I was so excited, I called Becca, I got my own drum now. So it's Barbara Ann Jeter. If you're ever, her husband is Charles. They're wonderful people. If you're ever in Nashville and you want to try it, it's Kings Hill House of Prayer. You can look it up online, and they welcome people to come by there to pray. But that's just one story. I'll share just a little bit about the gathering and the purpose of the gathering in Virginia, since many of you are going to come. I don't understand why it's in Virginia. I just felt like the Lord said, you need to do this in Virginia. I thought I had many more things. I thought I had a good 3 more years that I was going to be doing things. And then all of a sudden it was like the plug was pulled. Everything was pulled. I had to cancel everything, except he wouldn't let me cancel Virginia. So I have to do Virginia. My people came through in Virginia, were born and lived in West Virginia. But I'm going to tell you a little story. I'm going to do stories today but I'm going to segue here and tell you the story about Suuqiina. Some of you may have heard it, some not. Suuqiina never wanted to know who his biological father was because he was white. He just specifically said, I'm Native. I'm nothing but Native. And I said, you're not being honest with yourself. And I said, if you're not honest with yourself, then how can you teach this about, embracing your culture? He's like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. So finally, we got to Nashville. One day I said, please just let me find your father. He said, you won't be able to find him, so just go ahead and try. So I found his files for when he'd been in a residential orphanage. And I went through his adoption papers. I got those. And I found out that some lady had been writing of Mrs. William Connolly, who was his aunt, checking on the little boys. But this goes way back, And so when Suuqiina was still in the orphanage, probably he was 3 or 4 years old. And she was from Nova Scotia. And it was typed on one of the old typewriters. You know what I mean? I mean, it was old, probably 1956. And so I went, that was back before cell phones, we still had landlines. So I went to information for Nova Scotia, and I just said, I'm looking for a Madeline Connolly. They said, well, we have a William Connolly in Nova Scotia in Queens County. So I said, and they gave me 2 or 3 other names. And so I said, well, just give me those. First call I made, I said, I'm looking for Mrs. William Connolly. Well, that will be me. Well, I'm looking for a Madeline Connolly. Well, that will be me. Well, my husband and his brother were born in Alaska. She starts screaming, the little boys, my brother's little boys. I prayed for those little boys. My sister and I were just walking. We prayer walk every day and pray for. I said, well, I hate to break it to you, but he's not little anymore. He's really big and he's old. He was 50. And so I said, well, I want you to talk to him. So I walked. He was painting. He was in the room painting. And I just said, it's your auntie. She wants to talk to you. And he goes, oh. I said, yeah, it's your auntie. He goes, well. I said, it's your dad's sister. He went, I said, no, you've got to talk to her. You told me I could look for her. He gets on the phone with her, and his dad has the same birthday as him. And they both love pumpkin pie. They both like to play pool. And his dad talked to his dad, and his dad said, this is the happiest I've been. He said, you've made an old man happy. He was 76. Long story short, Suuqiina went I went with him. He was scared to death to meet him, I remember him grasping my hand, just so tight, and because he's going to have a person that left him, and it's cultural difference. And we got there, and Herman Smith was his name. He was from Canada, and he was in the Army, and he came into Alaska when it was a territory. And Suuqiina's mother had a baby at 14, which was Paul, and then Suuqiina, she had at 15. And then he left because it was like Vietnam War when the servicemen. And so lost track. Once he was adopted, there was no way to find him. And so we got there, and they were so excited. They want to hear everything about Suuqiina's nativeness, and we had to get out our drums and play, and we had to wear our regalia for him. Suuqiina's birth family that adopted him, did not want him to be native. Once they adopted him, they said, we took you out of that. You're not native anymore. Oh. So it completely healed a big place in his heart and his dad's heart. His dad repented to us, and Suuqiina said, you don't need to repent to me. And they became big buddies. Suuqiina would go up 3 times a year and they'd go fishing. They played, what's that? It starts with a P, that game you play. Cribbage. They played cribbage, and his stepmom just loved him, and she bought him a teddy bear. I've got a picture of him sleeping with this teddy bear because he never had that happen. And then we went up. They celebrated Christmas, so we went up and surprised them one Christmas. I wanted them to have one holiday with their son and arranged it. It was a surprise, and we told them they were going to get a big delivery, and we were the delivery. So it was a really healing time in Suuqiina's life. But what it opened up for us that we didn't know was that we found out through his dad's side, he's cousins with Terry LeBlanc. He's also Mi'kmaq. But he's French and he's Scottish and he's British and on that part. But they immediately sent us their genealogy. And the genealogy was for their whole family that went way back. And they had already added him in it, me in it. And when they were so wanting him and all of us. He got to go to a family reunion in Nova Scotia, and they just treated he and his brother Paul like they were just like ghosts coming from the past. I mean, the whole family had been so sad about losing those 2 boys. And but come to find out that he's the grandson of Stephen Hopkins, who financed the Mayflower. So he has, as far east as you can go, Boston, and as far west as you can go, King Island. And a year before we found out that he had that lineage, his paintings had hung in the museum in Alaska and gone to the Peabody Museum in Boston.
Oh.
His paintings had been there before. And so we did the research on Stephen Hopkins, and he came over to Jamestown first and made friends with the natives. Shakespeare wrote The Tempest. It was about Stephen Hopkins. He was Shakespeare's best friend. And this sounds just like Suuqiina. They had a wreck before they got, and so his grandfather mutinied. He didn't want to be taxed. He didn't want the big wigs telling him. And they were going to put him to death, but he talked his way out of it. I said, "Yeah, that's you." And so he lived in Jamestown for a while, and then he went back, financed the Mayflower. He was not a pilgrim. He was a dissenter. He believed in religious freedom, which is what Suuqiina believes in. But because he had worked with the natives and loved the natives, when he came into Boston area, they made him the ambassador between the whites and the natives. And Squanto stayed at his house in Samoset, and they hung out with him all the time. And 13 generations later, Suuqiina has done the very same thing.
Yes.
I tell people, just understand and know that when these quirky things happen, you just never know. And I believe that there's 13 generations and then the 14th, or the first again, correct? In the Bible, doesn't it go like 13 and then start over?
Yeah, oftentimes.
So this is the start over generation, which is why, I have said we have time to do it right. We don't have time to do it over. And so Virginia, Suuqiina's people, my people came into Virginia. Suuqiina's grandfather and Chief Anne's grandfather knew each other. Suuqiina's grandfather great-great-great-grandfather, knew the Pamunkey chief. It's unfathomable when you think about it. So we're here to finish our loop. The main thing that I shifted into 2020, right before COVID hit, the Lord said things are going to be narrow. In January, we had the River Winds out there and did a gathering, and the Lord spoke to me. He said, things are going to be very narrow for about 2 years, and I'm going to be taking my people through a very narrow place. And you will not be able to walk through with someone else. You're going to have to go through on your own. It's going to squeeze you a lot, but on the other side, there'll be a beautiful lagoon. And so when COVID hit, I was kind of like, well, it's probably going to be at least 2 years. We're going to be in the narrows. But the purpose of Virginia for us, for me especially, is about the next generation, highlighting the next generation. pretty much my life has become more behind the scenes where I want to be available to the next generation as an elder. I'm already operating in that with the River Winds. And they had asked me at one point, we'd like you to be on our board. And I said, I'm not going to be on any of your boards. I'm not going to do any of that. You need a safe place that doesn't have anything to do with ministry, where you can tell me anything and you're not worried about it affecting your job performance or someone taking your job. So I said, it's not going to, what I do with you is not official. It's just going to be me being like family to you. And the Lord told me when I moved to Alaska in 2000, I'm going to teach you about your latter years. You're going to learn from the eagles and the salmon. And when I saw the eagles, it was beautiful because I saw them teaching their babies how to fly. The daddy eagles would go out and they would do their wings down, and the babies would do their wings down. But I couldn't figure out the salmon. So when I studied the salmon, he showed me exactly what it was, and that was 24 years ago, and I'm in the time of the salmon. The eagles, I was able to fly around and flit around, put my feet down. But now I'm in the time of the salmon, and the salmon on their last run, the younger salmon feed off of their decomposing bodies. Sounds pretty bad, but that's what happens. And the Lord said, you're going to be feeding the next generation at a time when you feel like you're falling apart, and you're physically not going to have energy at times, and you're going to feel weary, and but understand this, as an elder, your elder years are your most productive and fertile years because your ego goes down during that time. And he told me whenever I've done a gathering, and this one especially too, he said, understand this, when the heat of warfare comes in, it's so boiling hot, it bubbles all the ego to the surface, yours included. And then I had an opportunity, there was some of that bubbling up in our team. I've had to put out fires with our team. And the first thing I wanted was to be offended. And the Lord showed me when you're hurt and angry at the same time, it's like concrete. That's what offense is like, concrete of the two together. He said most people get over being hurt after a while. It takes longer, but anger usually. But he said when you have the two together, it's the two together form this like water and the concrete come together. And it's just, so the whole time yesterday I was saying, oh Lord, please don't let me have an offense. Oh Lord, please. And then I had a situation where people were going around me and he said, call the person. But I don't want to call the person. They should be calling me. Call the person. I don't want to go kiss their ring. Because it was hard. But it was like, I called the person and I just said, I think we need to talk. I just said, I'm calling you because I love you. It's not about things that we do, the big gatherings and stuff. It's about the people. God allows us to do this for the sake of the relationships. And that's the hardest part for me, to be honest with you, is that trying to make sure no one's left out, trying to make sure no one's offended, trying to make sure. And there's going to be people left out. I'm going to say this about that. It's like, I remember I always had a lot of rejection I dealt with as a child. And so it stuck with me, and rejection was really hard. And that was usually when I would get offended, when I would feel rejected or left out. And I read Joyce Meyer's book on rejection, and it was the exact opposite of what I thought. She said, if you're struggling with rejection, it will never go away if you're included in things. It will only go away when you're rejected and you sit in the rejection.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
If you are rejected, it will never go away by being included in things or people remembering you or including you. It only goes away by being rejected and sitting in it. And then getting victory over that fear.
That's right.
And so if you're inviting people to try to make sure, if you've got a person struggling with rejection, you're trying to make sure they're never left out and always in it, that will never cure rejection. It's like a huge hole because it has to do with the person's wound or whatever. So anyway, the point of us being together in Virginia is to honor Israel, for First Nations to honor Israel, First Nations being the leader, not the mission field. First Nations worship. Barry and Laura are on the First Nations worship team because at the last gathering I did with B'nai Joseph with them, I called them into the circle. They came into the circle. We honored, and we're going to be doing that as well. If you have First Nations blood, and I'm not looking at blood quantum. My husband has blood quantum, but he's always said, I don't measure nativeness by what the government does.
That's right.
So the bottom line is that if you've never been called into the circle and you have that in your DNA, we will be calling you into the circle on Saturday night for those who want to come and welcoming you home. And Barry and Laura are going to march in the grand entry. And if you have native blood and you want to march in the grand entry, you can do that with us. We welcome you to do that. It is an amazing experience if you've never done it. To come in, and it's something happens when Suuqiina was adopted out, at 7, he was taken out. And he said he didn't realize until he got with the Maori, and our First Nations people over here that were believers couldn't do that in the church. So they could go to powwows and stuff, but they couldn't combine their faith with it. So many of them had put that down because the church had told them it was demonic. And so the Maori had to come over here in 1997 and put a drum in Richard Twist's hand and called him and said, we are warriors, you are warriors. And that's how a lot started. And Suuqiina said when that happened for him, he realized he'd been bent over. And that when he realized he was a native man and received it, he stood up straight.
Yeah.
He came into the fullness of his identity. And it was a part of him. And it doesn't matter which culture that is. One of the things we're going to do, I try to remember everything, but we're going to be honored. I always try to honor the African American community. I have them stand and thank them because our country was built on their backs. So many people have never even been welcomed to Turtle Island. And so we're going to be trying to do all of those things. And Larlyn and Jim, we have, with our drum team, we have a family coming that has 9 children, and they're going to be a part. We're going to protocol them as the next generation, and I'd like your grandchildren to be a part of that. We're going to call them up, and we're going to protocol them because they are already leaders. They're just growing into that. And it'll be a time you won't forget. I hope you will march in grand entry. Some of you will. It's a coming of passage for you. And you're very, very important. God has placed in your heritage, in your DNA, important things. Your grandparents are people of honor. They have walked with us for many, many, many years. And they have taken a lot of hits for it. But it says in the end, your children will rise up and call you blessed. And they are in the season of that happening. So we identify that you are very fortunate to have them here with you. We love them. First Nations loves them. And they're not, they're not pushy people. They don't come in and take over. They're a gift, but they'll sit in the back. You'll have to. Don't miss the gift. And having a First Nations family here, established here, is really important because it is the two families coming together. And there's not a lot of places that have that. So I think the Creator has sent them to you. And I feel good about them being here because you all are so safe and wonderful and honoring. But my prayer is for for Laura and Barry, that you'll have, when you walk in with us in Grand Entry, something's going to happen for you. I just know it. I told Suuqiina yesterday on the phone, I said, part of this is for Barry and Laura. God's going to be breathing on the stuff with them and from their heritage and knowing, the double winner. When you have your Israel, being a part of Israel, and then you realize you're parts of your culture. They're redemptive parts. It's amazing. So we have a tremendous worship team. Brandy and Alex Costello, they're worship rebels. That's the name of their group. And Alex just wrote a song that I'm going to have him sing about the Carlisle Indian School. It's a phenomenal song. And he just realized about 3 years ago, maybe, he saw this guy that was on Joshua Aaron's station, YouTube, jumping around singing, and his wife, and it was the Riverwind. So he called Joseph Riverwind, and he said, I got to talk to you. I just don't. He said, I'm from Puerto Rico. And Joseph said, you're Taino, brother. You're Taino. And he said, the first thing I wanted when I realized I was a Native American was I wanted an apology. He said, and then God spoke to my heart and said, why don't you be the apology? And so they're going to be here. Brandy, his wife, they just went to Ireland and actually did a CD there. It's called Chief Mountain. And I mean, when we sang it in Nashville, I thought, gosh, I was like, if I believed in the rapture, I would have thought I was going to be raptured. It was like, the pre-trib rapture, whatever. It's like, we're going up now. It's about come to the great chief mountain, and he will teach us his ways. And we're singing that, and he goes, come on, chief. And then Joseph starts the, hey, hey. And it's just like, and then they start singing, let's go up. And it went on and on and on. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like heaven. We had that happen with Barry and Laura at our place in Nashville. Oh my goodness. When they came together with the First Nations there, God just sat down on us, just thunk. You remember that? It was just like, and then we've got the Riverwinds, of course, and then we've got Alan and Deborah Baisley, and Jim and Laura are going to be there with our team as well. And we've got Gerard and Peta, who were also at our gathering, the Okama. They have a team from Canada. She's Taino too. So we're going to have lots of Tainos, which is, they say that they're extinct. Well, we've got 3, so they're not extinct. So we're going to have the Tainos representing. And then we have Barry and Laura, who are also going to be doing worship. And we're going to have certain times where it's all going to be together, but people will be brought up and everybody will be supporting that person. And then we have the drum group, a young drum group from 2 couples that have all these children, and they're just like so excited. Miss Quam, we're just so honored you would invite us. They're the new generation, and they just want to learn so bad. We have mentored Larlyn and Joseph, and Larlyn and Joseph have mentored them, and then they're bringing their children. So we're going to have the 4 generations, and the Hill's the same. Elizabeth Hawker is not able to attend. We've had a lot of stuff. Sherry Moore from Richmond, her daughter died last week. They found her. Sherry Moore was helping with the housing for the worship team and helping with getting we're doing protocol with all the chiefs, and she was helping me with the mayor and the governor. And I got a call on Monday that her daughter had had a seizure and her son had found her dead. And then we had Elizabeth's mother-in-law broke her hip, so she's having to go to Scotland. And then Atterette could not get her daughter's passports, so she's going to be coming in by Zoom. We're Zooming her in. So when Elizabeth wasn't going to speak, at first I thought, well, I can fill in. And then I was like, I'm going to do protocol on Friday night. This is about the next generation. So I'm going to have a panel of names. Holly Kingsbury is Hopi and Navajo. And then Mary Faust, if some of you know of her, she works with Nigel Big Pond and Chuck Pierce, some of those guys. And I'm going to have 2 or 3 others, but we're going to do a panel of the First Nations connection to Israel and let everybody kind of tell their story and talk a little bit about why Israel, why are we supposed to honor Israel, about being grafted into Israel. And then the River Winds will be speaking that evening, that afternoon. And then on Saturday night, it's going to be just protocoling the Lord, Yeshua. We will start with, and one of the things that we're going to be doing at each, on Friday night and Saturday night, Joseph and Laura Lynn and Gerard and Peta are going to dance in and bring the Spirit of God and dance out everything negative. They're going to come and make a complete circle. And then we've got different people praying. And Bat Rivka, have you heard of her? She's an Israeli singer. She's going to sing the blessing song in Hebrew on Saturday night. A lot of different things we'll be doing. And Suuqiina painted 12 paintings of all of the chiefs. It was all the lines of Judah, different ones, and they has the seal around them. And so those will be delivered. And then he painted a painting for Maps Global, where we're having it. Sherry had told me before her daughter passed that there's a lot of young people at Maps that have never, ever heard protocol or ever seen an Indian. They're from other places. So we will be doing the grand entry. We're doing the welcome into the family. We will be closing Shabbat. After we close Shabbat at 8 or whatever time it ends up being, we will do a second grand entry if there are any Jews that came after, so that the Jewish people can march in with us. And we always put them in first. We always say they're the First Nation of the First Nations people. So, predominantly a little thing on Suuqiina. Suuqiina is in a lot of pain. He had cancer of the esophagus, and they took his esophagus out 3 years ago. He's cancer free. He didn't have to do chemo or radiation, but they damaged nerves going in, and the nerve pain has increasingly gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. Nerve pain is pretty horrible, and nothing touches it. I mean, he's tried medications, nothing does anything for it. So the process with him at this point is when I get back, we're taking him to a second pain clinic, and they're going to try to do an ablation, I think, a burning of those nerves. And if that doesn't work, they're going to have to open him up, do a laparoscopy, and see what's going on inside of there. Nothing has showed up on CAT scans, MRIs, but he's just in. And I had a feeling, I wondered if he has scar tissue, because his body does make a lot of scar tissue, and it could be laying on things and causing the pain. So that's where he's at. He's perfectly happy being at home. He said, I miss the people. I do not miss the travel at all. He likes moving at a really slow pace. He's a very quiet and introvert person. He'll say 2 or 3 words to me. Most of our conversations is I'll say something, he'll go, yep. I'll say something, he'll go, yep. I said, you sound like you have Tourette's. It's like he loves just being there. He loves where we live in California. Loves the roadrunners. We have roadrunners in our yard. He's painted the roadrunners. He paints every day about 4 hours a day. He makes the jewelry. He's writing books. He's taken my podcast that I wrote and he's editing it for a book. He's perfectly happy where he's at, which is good. I'm glad he's getting to have his last days and not having to strive.
Right.
Yes.
And I was planning on traveling longer, but last year when I had anaphylaxis 8 times within 2 months, I'm like, I don't think it's going to happen. God will let you know things. He's like, I want to get your attention for just a minute. I don't think you. So this is my last. I will still be traveling to Nashville, and I will be doing more. The next podcast I'm doing is on men and women and what misogyny has done to men and women. How it's kept marriages apart, people apart. I'm going to do a podcast on that will become a book. And then after I finish that series, I'm going to do a podcast on chronic illness and how to navigate the medical systems. Because 10 years ago, our medical systems were bought out by corporations. So if you end up having a catastrophic thing or a chronic thing, most people are just like, I don't know what to do. And I've had 37 years of experience of learning how to navigate and how to be an advocate for yourself and what you need to do. And so I want to get that down. And then I'm writing a book on spotted bunnies with the First Nations community that have mixed blood and what that's been like for them to come back into their heritage. And so we've got those kind of things going. But for the most part, I won't be taking long trips. I don't want to worry my children. They're like, and I wanted to open it up for any questions that you might have or about what we're doing in our lives or about the gathering or anything that you might want to ask me about my life.
Well, do you have an actual schedule, like the times and everything?
I do. I'll be sending it out to the team. And so I'll have you guys and Barry and Laura will have it and you can share it with everybody. I'll be doing that in the next 3 days and it will have the schedule of kind of how we're running. There might be things that pop in, you know how that goes, but for the most part, it will have it. It will have who's doing it. So that's kind of that. My van was so full I couldn't see out of anything. It was all the way to the top. And I was just praying, Lord, get me to Virginia. If I have a flat tire, I don't want to. So when I got to Christine's, I was very relieved. I felt very safe and glad to be here. You can ask me about eldering, or you can ask me about First Nations, or anything you want.
I have a question.
Okay.
I think I had talked to Laura, I think probably about this. So, being raised, we were always told that we were Cherokee on my grandmother's side. My grandmother, that my father died when I was little, and so we don't. And then all the genealogy, so because it was in Richmond, so most of that stuff burned.
It burned, yes.
So I did a DNA, one of those 50Me or whatever,
Yeah.
and nothing showed up.
It doesn't always show up, and I'll tell you why. When a woman has her DNA done, it's only going to show her mother's side. It's not going to show the mother and the father's side. I had to have my brother to do it to get our complete DNA.
This is, it's on my father's side.
So it didn't show. The other thing is that you can have siblings in the same family, and one will show more on that sibling than another. So it's just not as clear as that you just get the DNA in it. And, that doesn't mean you don't have native blood. It just means that you're not carrying as much of that or it's not showing in your blood. So that's what's kind of confusing. People think they just do a DNA test and then it will just pop up. And I had no idea. We had never heard stories about our Jewishness. And the biggest thing that showed up for us was Lithuania and Poland. Nobody in our family said anything. So it wasn't recent, but it was like that showed up huge.
Right.
Lithuania and Poland, above Irish and Scottish. And I mean, so sometimes it will pull up things from centuries back, and that will show up bigger in your DNA. So that's one of the reasons that Suuqiina and I are like, when we put people on the team to pray and stuff, we don't say we're not going by blood quantum or, it's like, I understand now there's a lot of people that want to be native because they think it's cool and everything. There's a few, but most people really don't. They're like, I don't how many people really want? Because whenever Moses identified with his people, he suffered with them.
Yeah.
So when you identify with the culture, you're going to suffer with that culture.
That's right.
It's not about you just, and so there's a lot of people now that talk about pretendians and native wannabes and Corinthians are the Karens that are mean. It's a new one I just heard, the Corinthians. And the bottom line for us is that we're like, if you have in your family that what you were told, most of the time they didn't really want to talk about it. If it was grandparents or great grandparents, then we just tell people then just receive that, and that doesn't make you an imposter because I was not in Suuqiina was raised in a village and I don't have that kind of proof. And I didn't even dig around because the dolls rolls up. My dad, I was adopted out I lost all the side of my dad's side. And so it was like, I just know what was in my heart. And I've identified with my people, that's for sure, and suffered with them and doing what I'm doing. I don't expect, though, to be treated. I never see myself as someone like Jim or Suuqiina or Richard Twist, or I never see myself as a person that lived on a reservation or was treated bad. I passed as white. So I wasn't persecuted. So I don't ever see myself in a way that I'm like, well, yeah, I'm just like you. I'm not just like them. So when people come in, there still needs to be a respect for the people, of like, I really honor the people that paid the price. And there was a time at a Glow, they asked me to do the welcome, and the Cherokee chief released me to do it, and and then I'm up on the stage in full regalia with thousands of people, and I had to get over this thing of I don't belong here because God put me there. And he said this, he said, I put you here, but understand that I'm putting you here, and I want you to walk in integrity and honor because they're looking at you and they're not going to get to see all these people who paid the price. You're here. So make sure that you're thinking of them and you do a good job because there are going to be people that have done more than you in your life that are never seen. They're always in the background. And it says that God places us before kings. And so it's like when God gives you a place, at first I felt a lot of shame. It's like, well, I don't deserve, and then the Lord began to work with me on that and say, that I've placed you here. I'm not wanting you to usurp someone else's authority. And if there's someone else who has more authority than you, then you are to, like Suuqiina taught me that even. When he was on Cherokee land, he'd say, my wife will be doing the welcome. I can't welcome Cherokee land. And I had to come into that. Laura Lynn's had to come into that. Because Joseph's a chief. When you put a chief on somebody, it's like the title, it's like, but the bottom line with it is that if it's in your heart and you, because our people, Cherokee, they prayed for their offspring for 7 generations. And the way I look at that, because I know how I feel about my Jarrett grandkids and my Suuqiina grandkids and Bugs, and I'm like, now if Bugs had a child, and 7 generations later, they didn't look native, they didn't act native, they didn't have, would that still be my grandchild? Would that be the one I'd prayed for 7 generations before? It just, it's like, and I think in my mind, we might get a few scragglers in that never had any, but if they're good people and they love First Nations, and it reminds me of the scripture where they came to Jesus and said, those other people over there are preaching stuff about you. They don't even know you. And he said, well, if they're saying the right thing, just leave them alone. So, I just think most people that I know, when they end up doing the work, sometimes they can find, in Virginia, it's very hard. Because the other thing is that they put white and colored. And when I met with Chief Branham, day before yesterday, his grandmother was a midwife. And she got a cease and desist letter from the government because she was put in Indian when she delivered the babies. They wrote her a letter, stop saying Indian or we're coming after you. She gathered her kids around. She said, you see this letter? You know what I'm going to do about it? She ripped it up and threw it in the garbage. And Virginia wouldn't even, that part of Virginia wouldn't even know they had that many natives, except for, she reminded me of Moses, where they hid him in the bulrushes because the midwives were supposed to kill the baby boys. It's the same. He said, what we have here is cultural genocide. So, you know, and I've always wondered if they burnt the Capitol to get rid of the records. I'm just like, but there are no records now. I don't know if you knew that, for the Virginia natives to be able to identify themselves. And they intermarried a lot with the African American communities as well. Go ahead, Jim.
Can you explain what blood quantum is?
Blood quantum was when basically in Alaska, they did not have reservations, they had corporations. And then here they had reservations. But blood quantum is where the treaties that they formed, we're going to pay for your schooling and your health care. But you have to have it be at least 1/16, right? And so they said, we can't kill them all, we'll bleed them out.
That's right.
So once you get past 3 generations, you no longer. And so they're waiting for all the natives to die off, because then they can have everything, the reservations. And that's what they did with the corporations in Alaska. They said, we'll bleed them out. And we'd set them up as corporations, so there'll be no voting members and the government will own everything. And when Suuqiina went to Alaska, the Alaska natives can't have anything on the land or under the land, no gold, no uranium. The government took it all. In fact, he could not have a native name in Alaska and own property until 1997. He had to have a white name. It's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy.
Wrong.
Didn't he fight to get his?
Yeah, he did. There was a bunch that were fighting to get their names. And it's just so interesting. And I could go up there and own land. And that's what people did. They went in there, but the natives could not. And they started taking their subsistence rights. And when I went to a village the first time, this was back in 2002 or 1, and a gallon of milk was $6, and a box of cereal was $5.75. That's before inflation, because they have to fly everything in. So their subsistence is how they lived, and they kept cutting their subsistence, and that's the reason sometimes it's hard, because some as conservatives, some of our people that are on the right side of abortion laws in Israel are not on the right side of Native Americans. And so it's difficult. They cut, when President Bush went in, he immediately cut the health care to the natives. And so it's like the majority of the church sees this part over here. But if you don't have a paradigm for First Nations, then you think we're all doing okay. And so that's why it's important to educate. And to be honest with you, most of the politically, it's usually the Democrats that really are better about supporting the natives. Bill Clinton was the first president that ever went to a reservation. So it makes it challenging. Now, not if you have believing natives, but if you're going to the reservations and you're trying to work with them, and they're like, they don't like the conservative leadership because it's not representing their people. Now, I will say, Chief Branham told us that Reagan did the most for Native Americans than any president ever, because there's only 3 ways to get recognized. Judicially, the Congress has to do it. The president can do it. Or I think the other way was you have to do it through the other tribes or something. It has to be done a different way. There's 3 ways. When he went to meet with them to get federal recognition, it just went through about 3 years ago. They're the largest tribe in Virginia. All the tribes can fit into their tribe, and they weren't federally recognized. What happens with the tribes is because the piece of the pie is only this big, So if more tribes come in, it means less for the other tribes. So he said yesterday, he said, what happens with our people is we get the white man greed. Not disrespectfully, but he was just saying the scarcity principle, we can't support each other. But when he went to ask how it's taken, I think 13 or 12 years to get federally recognized. And what happens is after 2 years, they clear the slate and you have to start all over again.
Oh.
When you have a whole new. So if you don't get it in that 2 years, that's it. You have to start all over. The whole process.
Wow.
So but Reagan made all the Alaska Native tribes. He grandfathered them all in. And he brought in several of the Virginia tribes. He just made proclamation. And they were recognized. So it's really a hard process. And
Can you give us some guidelines for how to incorporate the drum? We've had the drum here. I know, I've heard that there's supposed to be like a keeper of the drum. Is that keeper of the drum the one who decides each week who plays, when to play, that type of thing?
he's the gatekeeper. And I would say Jim and Laura Hill. Because it's their heritage, and he made our drumsticks. Every time we play our drum, it's Jim and Laura. He's played everywhere. They both have and understand the protocol of the drum. And that's what you need. You need someone, because it's a sacred ceremony. It's worship, and it's not just banging on the drum. He could do a whole workshop on the drum and tell your people what the significance of the drum, the protocol of the drum, and he could also do a lot of teaching they could on First Nations. I would say they would be your drum people. I think that's probably why the Lord sent them here. They're going to be gatekeeping our drum. So.
For those of us who are visitors and not associated heritage with the First Nations, can you give us tips when we go to Richmond to the gathering, how we can honor those who are there?
So what we're doing with the protocol there, because we did a protocol at a gathering in 2020, and we didn't get out of there till around 12 midnight. It went on for 5 hours. So we're not going to do that this time. So protocol on Friday night is going to be, I'm going to be honoring I'm going to teach on protocol, what it is, so people will know what we're doing. And then I'm going to honor our team. Everyone will be, in fact, I'm going to have a table there with the team's pictures on it, their bios. This is your leadership for this gathering. Because I'm wanting to promote the leadership so that these people can be asked out to do other things. And then I'll be calling them up to do protocol with them in front of everyone. They will be the first ones that I will protocol. We'll protocol by lighting the Shabbat candles, and we'll have worship protocol. Yeshua first, Elohim. Then I will be protocoling, maybe not in this order, but I'll be protocoling any of the pastors. I sent out around 400 invitations. I sent invitations to every pastor in Richmond and outgoing areas, YWAM bases, Jewish community, synagogues, Messianic synagogues. So I will be protocoling, I don't know which order yet, but I'll be protocoling any spiritual leaders of the area. So that would be pastors and their wives, and any other type of leadership. If they're teaching a Bible study or anything, I will be protocoling them. And then the Jewish leaders, if there are any there. And then First Nations tribal people who are there from this area and other areas. And then, so what we're doing is, if you happen to see, you can bring, protocol gifts are a gift from the heart, and they don't have to be a big thing, but it's something that represents how you feel, and it can be It can just be anything. It'd be a candle from Dollar Tree. I mean, it's what God put. I love it because I let God tell me what He wants me to do. But if you want to bring protocol gifts and protocol someone, you'll be watching the ceremony, and then you can go up to them afterwards or on Saturday and ask them, I would like to give you a protocol gift to honor you. So that, and I will be instructing that night, so that if anybody wants to participate in it, we won't be doing it all up in front because we just wouldn't have the time to do it. But that's the way we're going to offer it to be done.
How are you defining protocol? Because I'm a little confused of my normal use of the word protocol.
Okay. Protocol is what countries do when they go into other areas, like our president goes into another country. He would do protocol. He would take a gift or something to represent our states and exchange it. And whenever Fortune 400, 500 companies or 400 companies go in, they train their people on so that they don't offend the other nation on protocol. It's something, yeah, it's been something that's been lost to the church, in that we don't do it, and it's very effective because it sets everything off in a state of honor, and it opens doors for people. So when I'm talking about it, it's basically a ceremony that we do to open the gates. And that's why I said the first protocol will be with the Lord, with our worship. That's what worship is. We're protocoling. We're at the gate, and we're protocoling the Lord to open the gate for us. And the whole book of the Bible is a book of protocol. When you look at Abraham, when he protocoled Melchizedek, or you look at Jacob, who Esau was so mad at him because he stole his birthright. And when he came back in, he went over and wrestled. The Lord wrestled with him. When he went back in, he had his people going out ahead of them with gifts, bearing gifts. And he came in low, it said. He was bowing down. It's about, he was coming back onto that land. And when you look at the Magi, when they came before Jesus as the King. So it's how we present toward the gatekeepers. It's just saying, this is not my house. It's not about asking permission or them ruling over us. It's just honoring. It's like knocking at the door. And one of the scriptures that I use for it, that, Yeshua owns everything. He owns us, really. God made us. But what is his protocol? It says he stands at the door and knocks. He doesn't barge in. If any man will open the door, I will come in. So honor, he's a man of honor. Even though he has the rights to everything, he stands at the door and knocks. So it's that attitude of just being aware that we're on someone else's land. And the way I can explain that with First Nations here, we can't go back and probably give all the land back to the First Nations people. They were treated extremely harshly. A lot of their land was stolen. And it's not like they want to get rid of all of the rest of us that are on the land. Every time my husband and I go to a new area, we find that the chiefs and the mayor and everybody of the area, and we go in and say, we're living here now. We just want to let you know we're here. We want to bless this place. We know that you have authority, and we want to recognize that authority. That doesn't mean that we're going to worship them or give them the right to tell us how to live our lives. But every mayor has said, I wish that you get more people like you. Everybody comes here to complain. And I'm telling you, even when you do that with someone, if you're Republican and they're Democrat and they're pro-abortion and you don't like it, we still protocol those people. We still go in because there's always a chance, that they will want to hear from you later if they see that you're an honorable person. And it's the opportunity to acknowledge to the First Nations people, and this is what we say when we do protocol with them. We say, we know that much, if not all of your land was taken, and we can't give that back to you. But we can recognize your authority and give you back your dignity and your honor that was stolen from you by coming and standing before you and recognizing your authority. That the book of Acts says that God designed the places where the people would habitate because he wanted them to find him. He's not far off. That's what that scripture says. And that if you move your neighbor's boundary marker, you're cursed. God is a God of boundaries. That's what Torah is. It's boundaries. So he understands boundaries. And so we tell them that though you lost your land, your spiritual authority on this land was never rescinded. You are the gatekeepers. You are the people of the land. And though you may not know it or the other people may not know it, when you pray, things happen.
Yes.
We know that you can open a gate to blessing to us. We're going to live here, but we want to live in blessing. And so we want to partner with you. And I said, I want my grandchildren and I want anybody that's on the land. We're raising our kids up and our grandkids to honor the land that the Creator puts you as gatekeepers of. They are always extremely moved. And they always say, usually say, if you ever need me, we're here. It's hard to get into them because it's like the Orthodox Jews who've been through so much, they don't let just anybody come in. And it's even difficult for native people to get in. I've sent out 12 letters, and then I've sent out emails, and then I've made calls, and we have five booked appointments. I'm going to have to, this week, work longer, and if not, we show up. And if we have to set our gift on the side of the building, we do it because it's the right thing to do. It's right to honor that these were the original host people and the gatekeepers of the land. And it says the first shall be last, and the last shall be first. And we do believe that they're a part, they're needed. Now, this is one thing I tell our people concerning Israel, and I'll say this at the gathering. If it's true that the First Nations people and leaders, that they have spiritual authority when they pray on the land. And I don't mean that everybody else can't pray, but there's just a special thing as gatekeepers. If that's true, and they're connected to Israel, and they're praying for the peace of Jerusalem, and they're praying for Israel, then when all the nations of the world turn against Israel, if our First Nations leaders are connected to Israel, whose prayers God's going to listen to? And our people praying, that's why we educate our people on connection to Israel. Our people praying could assuage the wrath off of everybody else. So that's how important that we tell our people they are. You need to be connected to Israel. We've had delegations go over there, and my husband's been to the Knesset, and I'll be telling that story about that thing, but it's not that First Nations are better. We just all have different functions. It's like men and women are different. They have different functions. One's not better than the other, and we have to work together and function together. We all have a piece that we bring. It's just that the First Nations have not been at the table. My husband he had a vision of that the table of the Lord, everyone was eating, and the First Nations people were standing along the wall starving because no one had made room for them at the table. Barry and Laura have made room for us at the table. For 24 years, they made room for us at the table. They were forerunners in that. Could be partially because that Cherokee blood in them was just, just like, hey, those are our people. I remember when Jonathan Miracle went to the first Sukkot, and it was our first Sukkot, all of us, and we were all just learning. And Barry and Laura, we went out to dinner with them, and it was just immediate. We just loved them. And I remember Jonathan Miracle couldn't remember Shabbat Shalom, so he said Shabbat Shazam.
Yes, he did.
Are you going to have copies of your book at the gathering?
Yes.
Do you have them here?
I have some. I can get them out now. Last night I couldn't because it was packed, but I have some out in the car. We have many different books. I have Warfare by Honor. Suuqiina has 2 new books, Preparing to Rule and Reign. I just now published and I don't have it with me, it's at Christine's, but published a children's coloring book, a Healing the Land coloring book for children, where they actually can get the Healing the Land message. And so that's going to be at the gathering. But he's written Preparing to Rule and Reign, and then the other one that he wrote, I can't remember the name of it right now. The one it was about the lies. We Inherited
We
Lies.
Inherited Lies.
Those 2 books are his last 2. He's writing one on the ephod right now.
So you think you're a joke?
Yeah, now, see, we haven't even seen that one at this point.
I have already copied it.
I'll have to make me a copy. So, pretty much we're taking the route of elders now, and I'm happy.
Is Suuqiina ever gonna put anything on YouTube?
Yes, we're getting ready. See, once that I'm back, I do all the administrative stuff, and he's like, I'm not a techno native. I'm not touching that stuff, and I'm not either. But it falls to me, because it's like he said, I'd rather paint. I'm like, can I get you away from the paint? No, you have to do that part. I'm painting. I'm doing the necklaces. So we've got our YouTube channel. We just don't have stuff on it yet. We are videoing this conference. So we'll have people be able to get that. We're going to try to live stream it as well. And we are now doing once a month. I do a meet and greet with Suuqiina, so everybody can see them. And I sent that out, but I'm going to have stuff. I'm going to have a book for people to write when they come in, like to register their emails and all that. We just meet. They've been really good. We've had about 4, and every different people get on. And every time we get on, it's different people. And they've ended up networking with each other. And we let everybody have a chance to talk about what they're doing. And then we just share. And then we pray for everyone. And it gives people a chance to connect with us, because we miss everybody. We miss the faces. But we'll be doing that. My podcast will be back on. And he will be doing some more stuff on YouTube. And we'll get some of his teachings as well on YouTube.
Some of those older ones, right?
Yeah. Somebody,
So for those of us that want to participate in the grand entry,
Mhm.
what would be the proper attire?
So what you would need to do is just look online to see. I mean, this is all kinds of different regalia, but you can have a shawl, carry a shawl. Our people carry a shawl because you're just starting. We have skirt. They wear skirts. We have ribbon skirts, but also just a skirt. And if you have any kind of jewelry that looks beaded or anything like that, it's good. If you have any feathers, you can put a feather in your hair, kind of braid it into your hair. And just know that you'll be very welcome. I'm really thrilled if you do that, because what that says is that you survived a Holocaust.
I'm glad I asked, because I wasn't going to ask, because it was that feeling because when we went to Tennessee,
Yeah,
you welcomed me on the land, and
Yeah.
then when my DNA came back, nothing. I felt like a fake,
yeah.
and so I'm glad.
You're not a fake. It bears witness to my heart. A person that has that much passion about wanting to belong and be with our people, it's placed in your DNA. And a person that comes in and wants to take over our people and run them around, that's a whole nother story. But that's not what I see with you, not what I feel with you. I think it's going to open up some things for you that have been dormant. But like I said, I'm going to say this again. You are a miracle. Our people, millions of our people died. And then if you're Cherokee, your people either hid in the mountains or they went down the Trail of Tears. Many died there. Babies were left alone. They called them fence row babies. And the Trail of Tears, our people weren't crying. Our people were pretty stoic. It was the people that stood along the line, Christian believing people that stood along and watched our people marched. They're the ones that cried. So it's a miracle, and your people prayed for you. And it means in your generation that has not been lost. You are a sign and a wonder. And you stepping up and walking in grand entry means the enemy didn't win.
That's right.
You're still here. And you're identifying with that. And that's huge. And I say again, I welcome you. I'm proud of you for being willing to take that step. It's a big step. The enemy will come at you and try to call you an imposter and make you feel like you're a wannabe and all that. Don't listen to him. He's afraid of the authority you have. So any of you all that have, I don't care how much drop of Jesus blood you have to have. They have that in there somewhere? I mean, they'll start it. It'll be like, I'm sorry, but you don't have enough of Jesus' blood. So you're not a real believer. That was governmental.
Yep.
And I respect the people that's still important to them because some of them have not had the revelation of, that Yeshua was a mixed blood.
That's right.
He was man and God.
That's right.
And Gentile and Jew.
Mhm. So he was a mixed blood. So I don't feel bad about that anymore. It took a while for me. The Lord said this to me. You've paid the price. You bought the ticket now. Get out there. Because I was like, how can I travel without Suuqiina? He's the real native. You paid the price. You bought the ticket. Get in there. And I was like,
So when we went back to the res back in 2010, even though I'm from that reservation, grew up there, I still wanted to do protocol with the chief at the time. And he wasn't the traditional chief, he was a government agent chief. But, because I didn't know who the traditional chief was. But we did protocol with him, and he said that no one had ever done that from any other tribe that had even come to our reservation. They just show up, And but one of the things that Laura and I did before we even went back up there is we wanted to not represent, but represent who Yeshua is. And we went up there with the attitude that we're not going to speak about a white man's Jesus. We are going to show our family and our people that Yeshua is a tribal man. He's from the tribe of Judah. He's a clan man. He's got 2 clans, Lion and Lamb. And when we started talking, especially to my family, who were Longhouse, that's the native religion on my reserve, they would not talk to us about Jesus. But when I said, well, let me talk to you about this guy here. He's a tribal man. He's got 2 clans. And he's probably darker than any of us on this reservation. And as soon as we opened it up that way, they would sit and talk. We'd sit and talk about everything, and then open the door right up. So that's one thing a lot of people need to realize is, especially our people, is that Yeshua is a tribal man. He knows, what it is. He knows the oppression. So that, and we were up there for 5 years, but we felt like we were on a desert island because we really didn't have anyone around. But when we left, a couple, a distant cousin, her and her husband, we sat down and talked to them and said, this is what we were intending to do. And that is to incorporate the drum back on the res and invite people to come and worship. If you want to come and dance. If you want to come and play the drum, but worship as a native, And they were going to pick up that torch and go with it. And from what I understand, they're still doing it.
That's awesome.
So, but it's good to be back.
I'm sure it is.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
You are most welcome. Let me slide down off my perch.
I have a thought I want to share with you, and then we'll pray. Thank you, Qaumaniq, for sharing with us. And
for having me, and I always feel at home here.
you are home. Last night while I was lying down preparing to sleep, kind of like Rachel said, whether in the body or out of the body, I can't tell. Whether it wasn't that dramatic, is whether in sleep or out of sleep, I can't tell. As Sunday began to become aware of the word transition, and you described several facets of transition for yourself and for others. When I heard you begin to describe it, I thought, yes, Father, I get it. When the leper came to Yeshua and asked for healing, he said to him, according to the Amplified Bible, the Loud Bible, he said, if you want to, you can cleanse me by curing me. To which Yeshua replied, I want to be cleansed by being cured. I'm not just going to touch what's going on right now. I'm going to cure you as a person. Yes. And once that had taken place, he said, now go show yourself to the priest. And it would still be required of him, even though Yeshua was the one who healed his sarat, his leprosy, as it's translated. He would still need to go through the Torah process, protocol back into the community, which means that he would have shaved his hair off and he would have spent so many days, have to be anointed on the third day and the seventh day, and be in the community but outside the community before he could be welcomed all the way back in. There is a process of transition and moving out of what was wrong into what is right. And our Torah portion, Korach has led this rebellion, and he led it out of offense. When you study back in Bamidbar, Numbers chapter 3, you will find that in the lineage of the house of Levi, that Amram, the eldest son, Amram had Moshe and Aaron. The next son in line was Yitzhar, and his son was Korach. Korach, Moshe, and Aaron were first cousins. They knew each other. Later in that chapter, when a prince for the tribe of Levi is selected, you would have thought, well, Moshe and Aaron already have their positions. The next cousin in line, according to lineage, would be Korach. Certainly, he would be chosen as prince. It wasn't Korach. The next son in line of Levi's sons was Hebron. None of his sons were taken. The youngest son of Levi was Uzziel, and it was his son, Elizaphan, that was chosen. Korach evidently felt slighted. Over 15,000 people's lives could have been spared if Korach could have gone to his first cousins and say, can you tell me how I got overlooked? I'm offended. I feel slighted. I feel disrespected. Can you tell me why this happened? How did Elizaphan, of all of our cousins, how did he get chosen over me? Instead of doing what was the proper protocol, he started talking behind the scenes. And he found other people who had their own personal offenses in the tribe of Reuben and got them inflamed. And then 250 other men joined their insurrection party. And ultimately, they inflamed the passions of all of the community of Israel to stand against Moshe and Aaron. "250 men died that fast. Fire shot out of the tabernacle and consumed them. the earth opens up and swallows families, and they go screaming alive down to the depths of Sheol, and then the earth swallows over top of them, closes back over top of them. That's something out of a Hollywood weird movie. The next day, less than 24 hours later, it says that the congregation of Israel grumbled against Moshe and Aaron the next day, saying, "You've killed the people of Yahweh." Moshe and Aaron fall on their face, and a plague breaks out, and over 14,000 people die before Moshe can, out of the side of his mouth, say to Aaron, "Go get your censer and put coals in it and incense and stand in front of the plague." And he said, "God, get it." You mean do what? But Aaron gets up, puts coals and incense on his censer, and goes to where the line of the people who are falling dead, and stands between the living and the dead, waving his fire pan and creating as much smoke as he can. Here's the word of Yah to us. The gathering that Qaumaniq mentioned, that Lauren and I think Joyce and Lynn were there. You guys were there. We were breaking for the afternoon. We was going to have an evening gathering. We were watching over an ordination service. People will come to Qaumaniq and Suuqiina, who presented them their document of ordination, read over them what was recognized as their spiritual gifts. They went to the next person in line where they were anointed and prayed over. They went to someone else who washed their hands for them. And then if they so desired, they could go out where a Cherokee chief, Chief Red, one of the most unique looking guys, he had a Scottish kilt on. From the waist down, he was Scottish, and from the waist up, he was native. Oh, I'd love to see him. He was standing there with a large shell in his hand full of sage grass and tobacco and other things, and had a feather fan, several different feathers. And you could go out there and he would wave this smoke over you from head to foot. I'm supposed to be watching people get ordained in this line, and I can't take my eyes off the smudging, as they called it, going on outside. And I go to Suuqiina at the end, and I say, "Tell me what this smudging thing is, because my spirit is just, you got to do this. And I don't even know what it is." He said, "It's a mikvah." When Yah came down on Mount Sinai, Suuqiina said, the mountain was mikvahed in smoke. He said the earth was mikvahed with water in Noah's day. The next time it will be in smoke, because it will be mikvahed in fire and there will be smoke. He said it's the same thing as entering into water, going down and coming up. It is a transition. It is a change of status. It's just that you're using the element of smoke to move you from one realm to the next. You come in from the outward realm, you're smoked or smudged, and now you're set apart to enter into worship. Guess who was in line after dinner? So I stood there with my hands out, and Chief Red starts, and he's got this smoke going over front and back, up and down. And when he's finished, he doesn't touch me with his hand. He takes the feathers and taps me on my shoulder. And I stand, and I'm kind of absorbing all of this. My clothes are now smelling like smoke, and I'm watching Suuqiina, who was next in line. And Suuqiina is not content to stand there and just let it be poured over him or blown over. He's reaching and grabbing it and pulling the smoke over himself. And I thought, that's the way. You live and learn. Aaron stood between the living and the dead and smudged the living to set them apart, to prevent the plague from coming over them, and the plague stopped. Why? It changed the living's status from a group of rebels to a people who would be shown mercy. And this is what God said. Those that have walked in offense, and those that have been argumentative, and those that have caused issues, if they will mikvah, the judgment will not come nigh to them. But they've got to be willing to change and to change their status. Come out from among those who grumble and complain and stand among the living who are the recipients of mercy. But you have to be willing to go through the process of the transition, to which then he was following. This is now the hour of transition. There is an open window and an open opportunity for us to transition, not only as individuals, but as a corporate body. Whatever offenses House of David has experienced, and whenever they took place, however they took place, it's not get over it, it's be washed from it.
Yeah.
Wash yourselves. Immerse yourselves.
Yeah.
Be changed in your status. Do not open your mouth to grumble. In the coming days, Qaumaniq talked about days of constriction and narrowing. When these days come, do not complain. If you don't have enough food, do not complain. If you cannot get fuel for your vehicle, do not complain. If you're not able to get to where you want to go or do what you want to do not complain. For judgment will be standing at the ready for those who do so. But for those that will stand and say, I ask for mercy and for your grace to endure and overcome, if you will purge your hearts and be set apart, Yah will care for you, provide for you, and put you wherever it is that you need to be. We're planning to drive, leave Wednesday and go to Tennessee. Did you see the price of gas? And it's like, Father, I was expecting it to be down under $2 a gallon, but so we would have. If you got to go, He will make the way to go.
That's right.
They're saying digital passports now. If you need to go, He will put you where you need to go. Today, Russia is in transition. If you hadn't seen the headlines, there is a coup taking place in the military and the mercenaries in Russia. Putin is under threat. Now, how he will handle it, what he will respond and do, and how that will turn out, I don't know. But there's a shaking going on in Russia. Did you know that? There's a shaking going on in the land of Israel, between Israel and the United States. Israel's Minister of Defense, I believe it is, said to those who live in Judea, Samaria, erroneously called the West Bank, go ahead and build. Run to the top of the hills and start building, he said, this week. Over 4,200 new homes to be built. The United Nations president said, that's against international law. You can't do that. Somebody, his last name Kirby, that's a part of the White House administration, said, we still stand by our understanding that there should be no new expansions so that there can be a two-nation agreement, the roadmap to peace type plan, so there can be a viable nation for the Palestinians in Israel. And Israel saying, we're going to build. And that minister said this, the land belongs to Israel, and we're going to build for Israel.
Yes.
So they basically have thumbed their nose at the international community and the United States in particular and said, say what you want, we're going to build our homeland. This land belongs to us. Right?
That's right.
What's going on? The earth is shaking. what's going to be the result? More shaking. But in that moment, there has to be, as Moshe said, go stand between the living and the dead. This world and its systems, it's dying.
Yes, it is.
Don't stand with that. Put your eyes on the kingdom. Be rightly focused. And stay out of the thick of the stuff. We have our own agenda. The world has its agenda. We have our agenda. Yeshua has given us our agenda. So, if that means for you that you need to go immerse yourself in the creek or a pond or take an extra long shower or build a bonfire in your yard and let the smoke wipe over top of you, because if you stand close to a bonfire at your house, the smoke's going to blow in your direction. Well, instead of running from the smoke, do a Suuqiina. Grab it and pull it up over yourself. And I'm setting myself apart. And matter of fact, if you can do that by some means, however Yah's directions to you would be between now and the native gathering, we want to carry clean, set apart spirits into that gathering.
We're going to have sage, and we're going to have this. We're going to have our shell, and we're going to be smoking people at the gathering.
Yes.
House of David is going to go to be a servant.
Yes.
That's our role. Whatever is asked, our role, our job is to be a servant. We're to go love and serve people.
We're also asking if you guys would keep your eyes open so that if we get a shooter or something anti-Semitic, this has been billed as honoring Israel, so we're going to have everybody be in a place.
I'll talk with you further on that in a few moments. All right. I gave you the word that Yah gave me. Transition. I shared with you a couple of weeks ago, prepare to move. Now that we have a lion from Dr. Suuqiina that has a remembrance of this building on it.
Hallelujah.
May he give us a building to hang it in.
Yes.
We'll leave it at that. Your way, your time, Father, your location. Prepare your hearts. All right, let's stand together, please. Are you coming, Laura? You can stay back there. Come. This blessing is Yah's protocol to us. And he said, if you would follow this protocol, you will place my name upon my people. So let us receive the blessing of his name. Yivreka Yahweh vayishmareka Yahweh panavileka vikuneka Isa Yahweh panavileka Vyasimleka Shalom. And may Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face to shine upon you and be favorable to you. May Yahweh lift up his countenance upon you. He may grant unto you Shalom. Amen. And as his word directs us, turn our hearts toward Jerusalem. Protocol of the city. Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch atah Yahweh, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Blessed are you, Yahweh our God, King of this universe, who has brought forth bread from the earth. In the name of your Son, Yeshua HaMashiach, is our bread of life, our Redeemer and Savior. We give you thanks and praise. Amen.
Amen.
Sure.